2:08 a.m., Gulf of Oman, 31 nautical miles due east of the Strait of Hormuz. An Iranian unmanned surface vessel just locked its optical terminal seeker onto USS Carney and was closing at 43 knots with a 480-kilogram warhead. No crew, no radio, no warning. The destroyer had 4 minutes and 11 seconds before impact. What the crew did in those 4 minutes, and what they found when they examined the boat's wreckage, exposed an Iranian capability that the Pentagon had not fully assessed until that morning. Welcome to Navy Powerline, where we break down the incidents that redefine how navies fight before most people know the fight has changed. The story of what happened to USS Carney in the pre-dawn hours of that morning begins not on the water, but in a classified intelligence assessment written 14 months earlier. The assessment, produced by the Office of Naval Intelligence, examined Iranian unmanned surface vessel development in the context of what Iranian-supplied drone boats had already demonstrated in Houthi operations in the Red Sea. The core finding was straightforward and serious. Iran had transitioned from basic GPS waypoint drone boats to optically guided terminal seekers in at least a portion of its USV inventory. The difference between those two guidance systems is the difference between a weapon that can be jammed and a weapon that, in its terminal phase, cannot. A GPS-guided drone boat follows pre-programmed coordinates. If you jam the GPS signal feeding those coordinates, the boat goes dumb. It loses navigation and either stops, circles, or continues on a fixed heading that may miss the target. Electronic warfare jamming has proven effective against GPS-guided drone boats in previous engagements. It is a reliable last-resort defense layer. An optically guided drone boat in its terminal phase uses a camera and onboard image processing software to identify a specific target, the radar cross-section of a warship, the heat signature of its exhausts, the visual geometry of its hull, and steers toward it autonomously. It does not use GPS in the final 3 to 5 kilometers. It does not care about GPS jamming. It homes on what it can see. The ONI assessment had been circulated. It had been read. It had been filed. USS Carney had been briefed on the upgraded threat before deployment. Being briefed is not the same as facing it at 02:08 in the morning with 4 minutes on the clock. The contact was first detected at 0204 by the destroyer's SPS-73 surface search radar. The initial return was small, consistent with a large piece of floating debris or a very small vessel. The range was 8.4 nautical miles. Speed, initially assessed at 38 knots. The contact was moving in a straight line on a bearing directly toward Carney's position. The watch officer logged it as a possible small contact and assigned it a track number. Standard procedure. At 0205 and 40 seconds, the contact's speed updated to 43 knots. No surface vessel made of floating debris moves at 43 knots. The watch officer elevated the contact to possible drone boat and initiated the alert chain. The officer of the deck was notified. The commanding officer was called to the bridge. The Combat Information Center watch supervisor shifted to full air and surface defense posture. At 0206, the contact was at 7.1 nautical miles. The commanding officer reached the bridge at 0206 and 30 seconds. She had 3 minutes and 41 seconds. The escalation of force steps for a drone boat contact are abbreviated compared to a crewed vessel. There is no crew to challenge. There is no radio call to make. The decision tree collapses quickly. Identify, classify, engage. The question is not whether to engage a confirmed hostile drone boat. It is which system to use and at what range. The Navy's primary options against a fast surface contact at that range were the Mark 38 25mm cannon, the deck-mounted M2.50 caliber machine guns, and the MH-60R Seahawk helicopter if one could be airborne in time. The Seahawk provides the most tactical flexibility. It can maneuver to maintain firing geometry regardless of the drone boat's evasive course changes, and engage from a range that keeps the ship out of the explosive radius. The Seahawk was not airborne. Getting a helicopter airborne from a cold start requires a minimum of 8 to 12 minutes for a non-alert launch. The threat timeline was 4 minutes. The helicopter was not an option. The Mark 38 25mm cannon has an effective surface engagement range of approximately 2,500 meters. At 43 knots closing speed, the drone boat would enter that range in approximately 3 minutes and 15 seconds. 3 minutes and 15 seconds to engage. 4 minutes and 11 seconds to impact. That was a 56-second window for the Mark 38 to destroy the contact before it hit the ship. The commanding officer authorized Mark 38 engagement at the threat's first entry into effective range. She also ordered the electronic warfare suite to initiate full-spectrum jamming across GPS frequencies immediately, accepting that the jamming would be ineffective against an optically guided seeker, but wanting to deny any possible GPS backup navigation function. The jamming went active at 0207. The drone boat did not slow, did not turn, did not respond to the jamming in any observable way. At 0207 and 44 seconds, the contact was at 2,200 meters. The Mark 38 forward mount began tracking. At 0207 and 58 seconds, 2,050 meters, the Mark 38 opened fire. The first burst of 25mm high-explosive rounds struck the water 30 meters to the right of the contact. The radar tracking solution had a small error at the outer edge of its effective range against a small, fast surface target in a moderate sea state. The system corrected. The second burst was on target. The rounds struck the drone boat's forward section. The boat did not stop. This is the moment that separated the Carney engagement from previous drone boat encounters. In prior incidents, including the USS Boxer drone attack and the Gerald R. Ford engagement, drone boats that took direct 25mm hits either slowed, turned, or detonated. The Carney's drone boat absorbed the first on-target burst and continued at speed, with a slight deviation of approximately 3 degrees to the right. The deviation was not random. The onboard guidance system had detected the gun muzzle flash or the round impacts and issued an autonomous evasive correction. Minor evasion, but evasion. The Mark 38 continued firing. Third burst. Fourth burst. The range was now 1,600 meters and closing at 43 knots. The gun crew had approximately 80 seconds. The fifth burst struck the boat amidships and hit what post-recovery analysis would confirm was the propulsion system. The engine stopped. The boat's speed dropped from 43 knots to approximately 15 knots over the next 8 seconds as momentum carried it forward. At 15 knots, 1,200 meters, still closing, 48 seconds to impact. The sixth burst struck the guidance module housing in the boat's forward section. Post-analysis confirmed that this round penetrated the electronics bay and disabled the optical seeker. The boat's course began to drift left, no longer actively homing on the ship's radar profile. At 900 meters, drifting, 12 knots, the boat was still carrying a 480-kilogram warhead. The commanding officer ordered the M2.50 caliber mounts to engage. 4 M2 mounts opened fire simultaneously, pouring approximately 2,400 rounds per minute of .50 caliber ammunition into the contact at a range that was dropping toward 800 meters. The warhead detonated at 740 meters. The explosion was large. A 480-kilogram warhead in shallow water creates a concussive overpressure wave and a column of water and debris that reached an estimated 80 feet at its peak. At 740 meters from the hull, the overpressure wave struck Carney with enough force to shatter 3 bridge windows, knock equipment from mounts in the CIC, and throw 2 sailors on the port bridge wing against the bulkhead. 1 sailor sustained a broken wrist. 1 sustained a concussion. Both were ambulatory within the hour. The hull was undamaged. No flooding, no fire. The ship had survived, but the detonation at 740 meters, not at the outer engagement boundary of 2,500 meters, not at 1,500 meters, but at 740 meters, was the number that sat in the after-action report like a weight. If the drone boat had not lost propulsion from the 5th burst, if the guidance system had not been disabled by the 6th burst, if the .50 caliber fire had not forced the warhead to detonate short of the hull, any one of those 3 outcomes changing meant the boat reached the ship. The Mark 38 had fired 340 rounds total. The M2 mounts had fired an estimated 640 rounds. Nearly 1,000 rounds of ammunition had been expended to stop a single drone boat that had cost Iran an estimated $180,000 to build and deploy. The mathematics of that exchange were documented in the after-action report without editorial comment. They did not require editorial comment. The recovery operation began at first light. A rigid-hull inflatable boat from Carney was dispatched to the detonation area at 06:15, once the sun was fully up and the area had been cleared of secondary debris hazards. The RHIB crew conducted a 40-minute pattern search of the debris field, photographing and recovering components. What they found changed the ONI's threat assessment. The optical seeker unit that had been disabled by the Mark 38 round was partially recovered. The housing was destroyed, but the internal circuit board assembly, mounted in a hardened recessed bay, was largely intact. It was recovered, photographed, and transferred to technical intelligence for analysis. The analysis confirmed what the ONI had assessed as a possibility 14 months earlier, but had not confirmed with hardware evidence. The seeker was a domestically produced Iranian system incorporating commercially available computer vision components and a purpose-built image-matching algorithm. It was not a copy of a known foreign system. It was an Iranian-designed optical terminal guidance unit, apparently capable of autonomous target identification and evasive maneuvering in response to weapons fire. The evasive correction the drone boat had made after the first on-target burst, that 3-degree course deviation, had not been random. The guidance system had detected an impact event and issued an autonomous evasion command. In testing parameters, such a system might be refined to produce larger and faster evasive responses. The version recovered from the debris field was an early generation implementation. Future versions would be better. That assessment reached the Chief of Naval Operations desk within 72 hours of the recovery. The implications were significant. Previous drone boat engagements had occurred against GPS-guided vehicles that could be jammed or that followed fixed courses without adaptation. A drone boat with an autonomous optical seeker and evasive maneuvering capability was a fundamentally different threat. It required a different defensive solution. It demanded engagement at longer range, with more firepower, at first detection. Because every second of delay allowed it to close, and every close-range engagement created the risk that a detonating warhead reached the ship. The existing close-in gun defense architecture, the Mark 38 at 2,500 meters, the M2s inside that, was adequate against the threat that existed before this morning. Against the threat this morning's debris field described, adequate was not the right word. The review of Carney's engagement produced 3 immediate recommendations. The first was an increase in Mark 38 ammunition loadout on destroyers operating in the Gulf region, specifically to address the volume of fire required against a maneuvering, damage-tolerant drone boat target. The second was expedited evaluation of a longer-range surface engagement capability against drone boats, specifically a laser or high-energy microwave system that could engage at 5,000 meters rather than 2,500, giving the ship more time and distance before the detonation risk became a hull impact risk. The third was a review of the Seahawk alert posture aboard destroyers operating in high-threat zones. The 8 to 12-minute cold launch time had removed the most effective defensive option from the Carney's arsenal that morning. A 3-minute alert posture, with a crew strapped in and rotors turning, would have put a helicopter in the air before the drone boat cleared 5 nautical miles. All 3 recommendations were flagged for immediate action. The 2 sailors who were injured in the bridge window blast were treated and returned to duty within a week. The broken wrist required a splint and restricted duty. The concussion required 72 hours of observation and light duty. Neither injury was the kind that shows on a ship's external hull after the fact. The broken bridge windows were replaced at a forward logistics facility. The equipment knocked from mounts in the CIC was remounted and tested. Carney was back on its patrol track 6 days after the engagement. The Iranian coastal facility from which the drone boat had originated was identified through post-incident intelligence work within 48 hours. Overhead collection confirmed the presence of 3 additional drone boats at the facility in covered storage. All 3 were of the same hull profile as the recovered unit. The question of whether those 3 remaining boats carried the same optically guided seeker system as the first, or an improved version, was assessed at high confidence as the former and medium confidence as the latter. The technology had been demonstrated once. There was no reason to assume it had not been replicated in the stockpile. In Washington, the incident was reviewed at the National Security Council level, not because of the tactical outcome, a single wounded destroyer crew, minor injuries, no structural damage, but because of what the recovered seeker hardware meant. Iran had crossed a capability threshold. The drone boat threat had evolved from a GPS-guided nuisance that could be jammed to an autonomous, optically guided weapon system that could not be jammed and could adapt its course under fire. The threshold crossing happened quietly, in a debris field at 06:15 on a Gulf morning, when a RHIB crew recovered a circuit board from the water. The commanding officer of USS Carney, submitted her after-action report to Fifth Fleet on the afternoon of the engagement. The report was direct, precise, and professionally unsentimental about the 740-meter detonation distance. She noted the specific engagement sequence, the round count, the system's failures and successes, and the recommendations in clear operational language. The final line of the after-action report read, "The defensive engagement was successful. The threat category it represents is not resolved." That sentence went to the CNO's desk unedited. It described the morning exactly as it was. Stay vigilant, stay informed. I'll see you in the next one.